Imagine having a loved one taken away from you by someone disturbed enough to kill them. And now imagine you don't know who the killer is. All you know is the person you love is gone and there is no one to answer for the crime. This is the cruel scenario that thousands upon thousands of families are faced with every day. As cold cases remain unsolved and tucked away in filing cabinets. Every day they are expected to get up, go to work, socialize and function, while the case of who killed their friend or family member remains unsolved. Thankfully, there is hope. According to data analyzed by the Forensic Genetic Genealogy Project, led by Dr. Tracy Lee Dowdeswell, as of August 2023, there have been 621 cold cases solved in the United States thanks to EG, and that number just continues to grow. In many cases, this brings little peace or closure to families, especially when the killers have been dead for years already. But it does help to close a chapter and at least answers the haunting question of who the killer was. Today we're reviewing 3 cold cases. Terry Becker was on her way to see her boyfriend on December 4, 1975. She was standing at the edge of the road, arm extended and thumb pointing up, hoping to hitch a ride to Adams County Jail in Brighton, where her partner was serving time. The 20-year-old had grown up in Wyoming with her parents, brother and sister, and after graduating high school had moved to metropolitan Denver, Like many others in the 70s, she lived a free-spirited life filled with love for painting and music. Her favorite bands at the time were Three Dog Night, the Steve Miller Band, and Steppenwolf. Tari was outgoing and eager to live life to the fullest. Hitchhiking was a common practice in the 70s, especially for someone as extroverted as Tari, who didn't mind riding with strangers as long as they could help her get from A to B. However, 2 days later, on December 6th, her body would be discovered in a field about 10 miles north of Denver, close to where she had last been seen. 2 motorcyclists passing by saw her along with her belongings. The autopsy confirmed she had been assaulted and then had been strangled to death. The main theory was that someone had picked her up and offered her a ride only to then assault her and end her life, dumping her body in the nearby field. But the clues were non-existent, so her case grew cold. In 2003, cold case teams reopened her file and ran some additional tests on the evidence that still remained from her case. Through this investigation, the team was able to extract another DNA sample belonging to a male and strongly believed this was the DNA of the killer. They ran the sample through Cody's but found no matches. In reality, it would take a decade before a breakthrough emerged. In 2013, the identified male sample yielded a match, though not a name. It turned out that the DNA matched another sample entered into the database by the Las Vegas police, who stumbled upon a clue while investigating a cold case from 1991 involving Sherry Bridgewater. Sherry, the sister of Bridgewater, had visited her apartment in May 1991. Accompanied by a friend, they discovered the lifeless body of 30-year-old Sherry, prompting them to call the authorities. The scene indicated signs of homicide, and the subsequent autopsy revealed that Sherry had been strangled. Despite the initial investigation, the case soon went cold due to the lack of substantial leads. Years later, similar to Dez's case, DNA extracted from a school assault kit was entered into Cody's. Eventually, in 2013, it produced a match with the DNA sample Colorado authorities were seeking to identify. Both states collaborated to pursue forensic genealogy, aiming to construct a profile that could lead them to the suspect or a relative who could assist in identification. By 2022, detectives were finally able to unveil the suspect's identity, Thomas Martin Elliott. Born in 1950 in Colorado, Elliott's life was marred by criminal activities. Following the murder of Tari in 1975, Elliott was apprehended in Nevada on burglary charges, serving a prison sentence. Upon release in 1981, he was once again incarcerated after assaulting a teenage girl in Carson City, Nevada. Despite parole, Elliott found himself behind bars again and was eventually released in 1991. Following the events, it's suspected that Thomas encountered Sherry at an AA meeting in May, leading to her murder in her apartment. However, the motive behind the crime remains unknown. In October of the same year, Thomas Elliott tragically took his own life. Upon the discovery of the likely match in 2022, authorities sought to confirm the identification through DNA testing. Consequently, they requested the exhumation of Thomas Elliott's remains in 2023 to obtain a direct sample of his DNA. Subsequently, on February 1, 2024, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police confirmed that Thomas Elliott was indeed the perpetrator, conclusively closing both Jerry and Terry's cases. Bone samples collected from him unequivocally matched Thomas Martin Elliott, affirming his involvement in both cases and definitively closing them. Nevertheless, investigations continue into Thomas Elliott's potential connections to other unsolved cases. On Monday, September 19, 1987, a black Ford pickup truck was discovered abandoned in a parking lot. The scene was eerie. The driver's side door was ajar, the window partially rolled down, the wipers were still operating, and the radio emitted a low hum. Inside the vehicle, authorities found a wallet belonging to a 20-year-old man named David Nobling. Additionally, women's underwear and shoes indicated that David wasn't alone. Despite an extensive search of the area, no individuals were located, prompting authorities to tow the car away. 4 days later, a jogger stumbled upon a grim sight: the bodies of two individuals, David Nobling and 14-year-old Robin Edwards, washed up by some pines along the south bank of the James River. Both victims had been shot in the head, and Robin displayed signs of potential sexual assault. Investigators pieced together the events leading up to the tragedy. David and Robin had last been seen on September 19th, the same day the car was discovered. They had initially met at an arcade earlier in the day, and later that night, Robin sneaked out to rendezvous with David and some friends to watch a movie. The location of David's car near the James River Bridge suggested they were engaged in romantic activities, indicating they were likely in a relationship. The peculiar circumstances, particularly the halfway rolled down window, led investigators to speculate that the perpetrator may have posed as a police officer. However, gathering additional evidence proved challenging, as the towing of the car potentially contaminated any further clues. Initially, police suspected a connection between this double murder and the case of Rebecca Dowski and Kathy Thomas, now known as the Colonial Parkway murders. The Colonial Parkway stretches through the Colonial National Historical Park in Southeast Virginia, boasting serene surroundings with fewer entry and exit points compared to typical highways. Yet this tranquility was marred by a series of murders that occurred between 1986 and 1989. Though David and Robin's tragic deaths didn't transpire on the Colonial Parkway itself, they shared eerie parallels with the killings that did. Both couples were found slain near Lovers Lane areas, despite the distances between the two locations being just a 30-minute drive apart. Moreover, robbery wasn't the motive behind either case, prompting investigators to consider a potential connection. Several peculiarities perplexed law enforcement, such as the perpetrators coercing the victims out of their vehicles before murdering them in different locations. Additionally, leaving the cars behind seemed calculated to ensure discovery and subsequent notification of authorities. However, these circumstances lacked clear evidence or explanations, leading the cases to grow cold over the years. Then, a chilling discovery emerged 15 miles away from where David and Robin were found. Teresa Lynn Spole Howell, aged 29, was last seen outside the Zodiac Club in Hampton, VA, in the early hours of July 1, 1989. Her body, bearing signs of strangulation and sexual assault akin to Robin's fate, was found near a wood line off Butler Farm Road by construction workers later that morning. Despite the similarities, law enforcement initially didn't connect the cases. For years, David and Robin's deaths were categorized as part of the Colonial Parkway murders, resonating with the deaths of another couple, Cassandra Haley and Richard Cole, in 1988. In a significant breakthrough, DNA evidence from the case of David and Robin has recently led to the identification of their killer, as well as shedding light on Teresa's murderer. Early in January of 2024, authorities confirmed that the perpetrator was Alan Wilmer Sr., a local fisherman from Lancaster County. Alan passed away in 2017 at the age of 63. When Alan was discovered deceased at his home, authorities, unable to identify him, collected a DNA sample in an attempt to locate his family members. Remarkably, this DNA sample not only helped in informing his family of his passing but also provided a match to 3 unsolved murders in the area. While police have not disclosed specific details linking Alan to the murders of David, Robin, and Teresa, as the investigation remains ongoing, they did affirm that if he were alive, he would have been officially charged with all 3 murders. This underscores the solidity of the evidence implicating him as the perpetrator of these heinous crimes. The identification of Alan as the killer represents a significant breakthrough in these long-pursued cases, offering closure to the families of the victims and providing a crucial step forward in the pursuit of justice. On May 12, 1994, Bert Allen Mann, a resident of Austin, TX, tragically encountered a horrifying scene upon returning home from work. He was met with an assailant who viciously attacked him, ultimately fatally stabbing him and leaving him to perish on his kitchen floor. At 46 years old, Bert suffered multiple stab wounds, indicative of a violent struggle. The investigation revealed that a rear sliding glass door had been forcibly entered, suggesting that the perpetrator gained access to the residence in this manner. Authorities surmised that Bert inadvertently stumbled upon a robbery in progress, during which the situation escalated into a deadly confrontation. It appeared that Bert and the intruder engaged in a struggle near the front door, resulting in Bert being fatally stabbed. Despite the apparent straightforwardness of the crime's motive, investigators were stymied by the lack of leads pointing towards a suspect. The substantial amount of blood at the scene indicated that the assailant likely sustained injuries during the altercation as well. In 1994, DNA analysis was in its nascent stages, offering limited assistance in solving cases of this nature. Over the ensuing years, investigators pursued up to 40 leads in an effort to identify a prime suspect. However, none of these individuals could be definitively linked to Bert Mann's murder. Cold case investigators persisted in their efforts, and in 2005 a breakthrough emerged when detectives tested a bloodstain from the crime scene for DNA. Although they managed to generate a unique profile for an unidentified male, entering it into the combined DNA index system, CODIS failed to yield a match in March of 2023. The Bert Mann murder case took a pivotal turn as authorities decided to revisit it. The DNA profile from the crime scene was sent to Board Technology, a company specializing in forensic genetic genealogy, in an effort to leverage familial DNA evidence to identify potential suspects. Remarkably, within just 3 months of receiving the sample in June 2023, Board managed to narrow down the search to one individual, Kenneth Robbins. Typically, such identifications can take years, making the swift discovery exceptional. With Kenneth identified as a possible suspect, law enforcement swiftly obtained a search warrant for his DNA and secured a direct sample from him on September 8, 2023, to compare it to the DNA found at the crime scene. However, the investigation took a tragic turn on September 13th, just 5 days after Kenneth provided his DNA sample, when his employer raised concerns about his well-being. Kenneth, a long-haul trucker, had failed to respond to calls or messages, and his work vehicle remained stationary at a truck stop for an extended period. Police discovered Kenneth deceased inside the vehicle, having taken his own life. Subsequently, on February 8, 2024, the Austin Police Department released a statement confirming that the DNA found at Bert Mann's crime scene indeed matched Kenneth Robbins. This conclusive evidence placed Kenneth at the scene of the struggle that resulted in Bert Mann's untimely demise. On September 13th, Detective Jednick received concerning news from the owners of a trucking company regarding one of their vehicles stationed at a truck stop in Weatherford, TX. The truck had remained stationary for an unusually long period, prompting suspicion. Acting swiftly, Detective Jednick reached out to the Weatherford Police Department, urging them to conduct a welfare check. Upon arrival at the truck stop, Weatherford Police made a grim discovery: Kenneth Wayne Robbins, the primary suspect in the burglary and subsequent murder of Mr. Bert Allen Mann, was found deceased inside the cab of his truck. Kenneth, who resided in Austin at the time, was confirmed to be the individual responsible for breaking into Mr. Mann's residence and perpetrating the fatal assault. Subsequent autopsy results provided confirmation that Kenneth Wayne Robbins had indeed taken his own life. This tragic turn of events brought an end to the pursuit of justice in the Bert Mann case, underscoring the complexities and uncertainties inherent in criminal investigations. Despite the closure brought by the identification of the perpetrator, the circumstances surrounding Kenneth's demise served as a sobering reminder of the human toll exacted by such heinous acts.